Coach Mo.
Hey, it's Coach Mo.
Hey, it's Coach Mo.
Knowing what you want to accomplish professionally is just the beginning. I'm Coach Mo, and this podcast is for young professionals and emerging leaders who want to lead, achieve, and succeed at work. You've got executive ambitions and the drive to get there. Join me for perspective, insights, and thought-provoking questions that only you can answer. Today's episode starts now.
Tuesdays with Coach Mo.
Alarm! It's time to get up and get going. Get your workday started. Consider this, if you're progressing on the typical timeline, by the time you're 22 years old, you've stepped onto a professional pathway. And as you look ahead, particularly for professionals here in the United States, you can expect to have a span of 40 years ahead of you for your professional career. And in general, there's a significant possibility that you will have 10 different jobs during this time. There's also a good chance that you will have some good jobs and some better than good jobs and some not so good jobs. So exactly what will make the difference for you in declaring a job better than good or not so good? Well, there are a range of factors that come into play, from how good or bad your boss is to how well you are connecting with an organization's values, or just sheer lack of satisfaction that you have come into discover that you're working in a field that you're really not enjoying, and this has been your pursuit up until this point. So I've heard it said before that many people start out on a career ladder only to discover that they're climbing the wrong ladder. Whatever the reason, it truly becomes a measure of your level of engagement. I believe that being highly engaged in your work, you're more likely to figure out how to get up and over those challenges that creep up on a daily basis. And on the other hand, when you're disengaged at work, those challenges that creep up in your day, they appear much grander and ominous than they really are. The point of all of this is that there is a high likelihood you will be faced with job changes, whether by some external factor that you have no control over, or possibly something that is going on within you. However the situation presents itself, how prepared are you to navigate this time of change? What I've come to discover is that people generally hate the thought of looking for a job. It's uncomfortable. It's filled with disappointment. It takes a great deal of time, and you work in a fog, kind of not knowing when it all is going to come to an end and when you finally land the next opportunity. But now, having spent years helping people create their job search marketing plan to get them to their next opportunity, I've come to realize that a good part of the struggle actually comes as a result of a lack of self-awareness. You know, that awareness of your own true strengths and values and motivators. In addition, there's a lack of how you're organizing yourself for the job search in a productive and efficient manner. So as a resource to help you, as you're either passively considering or actively preparing for a job change, I'm thrilled to introduce to you a product called YouMap. YouMap is a holistic, actionable, and intuitive career profile tool. This resource guides you through a personal discovery in 4 assessment areas referred to as pillars, and they are your strengths, your values, your motivating skills, and interests, resulting in a 10-page personalized YouMap career profile. I'm excited to share with you that YouMap founder, Kristen Sherry, recently received a 2020 Career Innovator Award by Career Directors International. And as an aside, the show notes for today's episode will be found on my website at moniquebetty.com podcast, and it will contain links for you to access information at the YouMap website. But today I'm excited to talk with YouMap coach Kimberly Tilley. Kimberly is one of a number of independent coaches who offer the unique YouMap resource. In addition to benefiting from the career profile tool, a YouMap coach is available to work with you one-on-one to expand your understanding of the insights revealed in the tool. In addition, the YouMap coach is prepared to help you broaden your thinking for what is possible in your career pursuits. Now, in this interview, we discuss the changing job search landscape from the perspective of the employer and the employee. And then secondly, navigating a career change, the opportunities, the obstacles, and the resource of YouMap. So as you listen to my interview with Kimberly, it begins with her response to my question: how has career navigation evolved in the last 10 years?
I would say that for employers, when they're looking at how things have changed, I think that there's much more of an emphasis on competing for employees. In the past, there have been so many jobs and so many applicants, but now I think that they're starting to realize that they need to compete for the very best people. And so they're offering different benefits and more variety in terms of those benefits.
And when you say like some of the benefits, what stands out for you that employers are doing maybe more of or less of as it relates to benefits?
I think the number one thing that I see is wellness benefits. So a lot of it is fitness and resources that would be, like your well-being. And some of that could be traced back to lowering costs. Like it might be like a healthcare prevention strategy, making sure that people are taking care of themselves and making sure that they're not getting sick. But a lot of times it's also about kind of fulfilling what those inner needs are.
And that sounds like it supports, this really crying out for balance that we so often hear. And I usually use that word integration. And there's so many naysayers who say, there's no such thing as work-life balance.
Yes, that's exactly it. I think they're trying to address some of those things. I mean, at this point, you would see, I want to say around 1990, there were about 60 basic healthcare plans. Today, there are over 350. So you can see how they're trying to adjust and adapt to the new environment and to different needs.
And I've even heard a lot more talk, in particular, us being in this age of COVID and working from home, the benefits of more flexibility in terms of the time of day that you even work. So they actually, following the trends along with like the gig economy and everyone wanting to dictate when they want to be on and off to support their lifestyle. Larger organizations are recognizing that they're going to have to do some of the same. So that's a really terrific point from an employer's perspective, what's evolved around the benefits that they're offering. Now,
Yes.
Take that further and from an employee perspective, I know we've kind of touched on that, but what else from your perspective has evolved when it comes to the employee, like in terms of what they're looking for?
Well, I think that employees today are far more concerned about the whole package. They're concerned about their work-life balance is a huge thing, and you already kind of touched on that. But some of the larger companies, especially I would say like on the coast, tend to be a little bit more flexible and offer either flex time or flexible time off, unlimited parental leave, things like that. So some of them might be looking for something like that. And some of them are looking for things like social responsibility and do their values match up and align? And, what is their projected growth and in terms of advancement, how aligned are they, or how aligned is a particular role with their talents and their interests?
Absolutely. Which, when you say talents and interests, makes me think this is why you're here to talk about YouMap and talents and interests. So, really good point. Pivoting really the focus of our conversation to shift in terms of what is it that we know to be true about individuals who decide, you know what, I want to make a career pivot. I want to make a career change. What is prompting that in people? What are you hearing are the reasons why people want to make career changes?
Well, I think that In my experience as a coach, I see a few situations that come up over and over. Sometimes people are bored at work, and it's usually that they're not using their talents, or they don't have an opportunity to leverage them, or that they haven't sought out an opportunity maybe. There's a very common situation where people are doing work that they're very good at but that they don't like. So maybe they have really strong skill set, especially with like administrative work, and they don't enjoy it, but they keep getting it because they're so good at it. So then they might look at, well, is there something else I could be doing? And then there's also values, which we talked about, which I've learned as a coach, I think is probably one of the most important things. You know, if you have a value of respect or open communication, anything like that, and it's not being honored in your life, that definitely promotes people looking around, seeing if there's something else that they might want to do.
Which really kind of echoes or enforces what we've heard coming out of the Gallup organization and their work behind the Clifton Strengths is the low engagement. Somewhere around like 33% of workers are engaged in the workplace. And that leaves this whole gulf of many others who are not engaged at work and are
Yes.
bored and good at what they do, yet not yet necessarily maximizing their talents to, kind of spark that sense of engagement.
When you're spending so much time at work, you're spending at least half of your waking life at work for the most part. And for you to be bored and feeling like it's a waste of time or not fulfilled, it's a terrible thing for someone. And I think it wears them down. And that's why one of the main reasons why people start looking around for something else. There's got to be a better way for me to earn my living in a way that's more fulfilling to me.
I hear almost the career pivot is being driven by somebody moving away from something. And so, how does someone generate the going towards something? Getting excited about what they're moving toward as opposed to, I'm just trying to leave this place. Because I often say with my clients, it's really distinguish those when you come to decision points. Are you moving away from something or are you being drawn to something? Because I believe that brings a different energy.
I 100% agree. I think that usually it starts with moving away from something. There's some sort of a contrast, and they're seeing something that they don't like. But then, to your point, what are you moving toward? Like, it shouldn't be like an entirely negative decision to move on, or to go to a different career. But that part, I think, is rooted in self-discovery,
Mm.
because so few people really have thought through some of the things about themselves and what they enjoy doing, and have kind of approached things like, when you're looking for your first job, for instance, like, you kind of take what you can get, and you're excited, you've got a paycheck and everything. And after you're there for a while, then you start to wonder, like, is this really what I want to be doing? Is this really fulfilling to me? So I think taking the time to do that self-discovery journey is very important.
Well, and that takes me to my next question for you in terms of what methods do people frequently use to make this sort of a job change or career pivot?
Well, one of the things I think that, I mean, probably like the most common one would be like training, or looking at, different certifications that people can get. But some of the more creative ones would be like job shadowing, informational interviewing, finding out more about what's out there. So once you know what it is that you want, it's like, what jobs match up with that? For instance, let's say that you are a operations manager, but you're very interested in marketing, or social media. Are there certain responsibilities that you could take on as a stretch assignment that would help you gain some experience there and make some connections there, and then eventually lead to a new career?
Hmm. Which, in my opinion, is the value of lateral moves.
Oh,
Some
yeah.
people say, well, is lateral, I'm not progressing. It's like, yes, you are. If you're having an opportunity to wear a new experience and build a skill set in an area that's of interest to you, and I oftentimes have like lawyers come to me for coaching because they no longer like law. It's not really doing the work I really thought it was going to be. I guess they, like so many things, we have ideas of what we think something will be like until we actually start engaging with it. And then it's I can't believe this is it. This is all I do every day. And I'm not finding any pleasure in this.
And that would be so hard for somebody who is, like, say, an attorney, for instance, because you've spent so much time getting the education and building yourself up to be at that point, and only to realize that maybe you don't necessarily care for the reality of being an attorney. And so then, where do you go from there? Another thing people can do too would be something like volunteer work. There are different job sites where it will give you a link to different jobs that match up with your interests and skill sets where you could just volunteer to do it for a short time.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's a project specific thing, and that could give people exposure to things too, just to see if it's really what they are imagining that it is versus the reality of it.
Absolutely. Because there's so much we don't know when you're sitting on the sidelines, as I call it,
Oh, totally. Yeah, absolutely.
And so along those lines, so void of having the experience, what are some other obstacles that get in the way for someone to successfully navigate a career change?
I would say some of the biggest ones that I hear would be waiting for the right time. Like I'm just waiting for things to line up and for it to be the right time. But the right time so often doesn't come. Things aren't going to line up perfectly in most situations, but it's like, are you going to be ready to go for it when you do have the opportunity? Or like, what's your bottom line? Like, how long are you willing to stay in the current role that you have? Another one would be negativity. And sometimes that comes internal. Some people call them like automatic negative thoughts, like, oh, you can't do that, or that's going to be too hard. That's going to take too much time, or whatever it is, but they're coming from inside you. And I think that we're psychologically wired to protect ourselves from disappointment or hurt or wasted effort. And so that's probably where that comes from. But a lot of times it stomps on our dreams. The other half of that is one that's coming externally, like maybe from somebody that you trust and like a lot. And they're saying, don't do that. And it's motivated also by that protecting you instinct that they might have, but they are discouraging you in a way from pursuing something that you really want to do. And because you respect them and like them and that they're motivated positively, you might listen to that. But those are all things that block people. And then sometimes it's just things like money or having an assumption about something like, oh, well, I couldn't switch it, like not at my age or not in my current situation, whatever it is. But there are a lot of people who make assumptions and think that because of a certain thing, they aren't able to progress and realize what their dream is.
Mm-hmm. Terrific. I mean, when you think of obstacles, you've just outlined, I've captured waiting for the right time, our own negative thoughts, other people,
Mm-hmm.
making assumptions. All
Yeah.
of these are elements that keep people stuck and not moving toward stepping into their best professional self using their talents, their gifts, and in alignment with their values. So I'd really like to invite you to talk more about or talk really openly about, YouMap and the product that you are a coach for.
Yeah.
How long has it been around? How does it work? That sort of thing.
Okay, sure. So UMAP was released in 2018, and there's a book, and then there's a whole coaching program that goes along with it. And it measures the 4 pillars of career satisfaction. Kristen Sherry is the author of the book and the creator of the program. And she put this together after years of being a coach and realizing there are really 4 things that determine whether you're going to be happy at work and whether it's going to be a good fit. And those things are your strengths, which are measured by Strengths Finder. They're your values, your core values. There are your skills. So you have motivated skills and burnout skills. And then lastly, there's your style. There's your career personality as its evidence. So that would be things like the Holland Code, if you're familiar with that. So are you a realistic person? Do you like to work with your hands? Are you investigative? Do you like to ask a lot of questions? And so on. I think that those 4 fit together so well that it really does give somebody a complete picture of who they are and what they offer. And when you're doing coaching with somebody, the last piece of it is coming up with a unique contribution statement where you take all 4 of those things and fit them together into like 1 or 2 sentences that really shows you what differentiates you from other candidates. What is so interesting to me, or has been very interesting to me as a coach, one of my very first coaching clients came to see me and she was crying and a little bit upset. She didn't feel like she would be able to ever meet her goals in life. And she felt like she didn't have what it takes. And we talked about her strengths in that first meeting. And when she got up, she started to cry again. And I was like, uh-oh, that's not good. But she told me like, this was life-changing. I always thought these things, like her strengths, particularly, it was funny, her positivity, she felt like had been a drawback and made people not take her seriously. But as we talked about it and she started to understand and learn about how she was using it, she realized it was such a huge advantage. But I find a lot of people start by thinking that their strengths are either fluffy and unimportant, or else they are some sort of a drawback because they've been critiqued maybe for misusing them in the past or something like that.
Mhm.
And once they start to realize this, it's like just watching their self-esteem and their bearing and the way that they carry themselves, you just can physically see a change in people as they're starting to gain confidence, and it's so great. I That's the part of my job that I love the most.
Now, with YouMap, how does it support someone in navigating to potentially another career field? Does the information, as a result of the four pillars, help point individuals in directions of type of work?
It can. So sometimes people, not everybody is coming because they want to change careers.
Okay.
Sometimes people are coming because they want to optimize. Sometimes people are coming because they're thinking about getting back into the workforce or something like that. So it's not always somebody who's about to pivot. But
Mhm.
when it is, usually the last coaching session I do with people, we talk about their unique contribution statement. And then we also talk about like, how are you going to use what you've learned to job search? And we have some tools and things that are proprietary that really help people get a jump on that and start looking from the place where they have interests and where they're talented, as opposed to, I guess, like the traditional job search. I know when I finished college, like I was looking for basically anything that I
Mhm.
could do rather than looking at what I was really good at and what I was really interested in. So starting from that standpoint and looking for a role really does change the framework, I think, of a job search. And I think a lot of people have been surprised by it, but then it works so well that it's got a great return for them.
Mhm. And you mentioned proprietary search tools. I'm wondering, is that information included if an individual buys? Is it a hard copy book or is it an online ebook? And so just wanting to clarify the product so that people are aware of what some options are for them.
Yes, they can do the ebook or the audio book. They could do the hardcover book. And then there are these tools and things are included in it. What is different, I think, is that having the insight of a coach for one thing and being able to break it down. One thing that StrengthsFinder does is like they often have this unique, like a customized report for you based on your top five.
Mhm.
And so being able to go through that with somebody as opposed to you just getting a report that gets spit back out at you and then it's up to you to start going through it. And it's very hard to ask yourself some of these insightful questions and come to new realizations. So that's why we recommend working with a coach, but you can't do it on your own if you'd like to.
With the book, does it include information for the job search?
It does. It has
Okay.
suggestions and other things for the job search.
Okay.
And I should mention too that some people do choose to do a report, like a YouMap report.
Mhm.
So whether you're working with a coach or if you want to do this independently, you can purchase the report and the assessments and things that go with that and without working with a coach.
Okay. So it sounds like there are a few different options. There are the avenue to the book,
Hmm.
which is available in three different formats: ebook, audiobook, hard copy.
That's right.
And then there is the UMAP assessment.
Yes. So those would be like all four of those assessments around like your strengths finder would be included with that, your values exploration, your skill sort, and then the one to figure out your style or your work personality, so to speak.
Hmm.
So all four of those would be together. And then you would get a personalized report and some guidance around how to move forward with that.
Okay. And if someone's looking to work with a coach, how do they go about doing that? And I will be including, just as a heads up for everyone listening, the links to information that Kimberly and I are speaking about. They will be included in the show notes for today's podcast. So, how does one cross the bridge to connecting with a coach for UMAP?
If you go to myumap.com, there's a tab called Find a Coach, and you can find a coach based either on their specialty or the area where they live. You know, we actually have UMAP coaches now in, I think, 4 countries. So there's Canada, the US, the UK, and somewhere in the Middle East. I'm not remembering off the top of my head, but we do have UMAP coaches all over the world. Most coaches work virtually, but some do work face to face as well.
Okay. So there are coaches that you can, I guess, filter by specialty or by location.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can check that out, and then you can also, most of us have our own sites. You can go there and find out a little bit more and see, like, who do you think would be the person that you feel the most comfortable talking with.
Awesome. And what's the best place for an individual to go just to learn more or to get kind of a peek under the tent in terms of what the UMAP product looks like?
I would go to myumap.com and look around, but there's also Kristen Sherry has her YouTube channel
Oh,
that you can just look her up. Her last name is spelled Sherry.
okay.
And she talks about, she has a 2-minute video on each strength and how that shows up. And she has some success stories there. And there's all kinds of information. So I'm somebody who likes to look at social proof, like what other people are saying,
Uh-huh.
how they review things. So it's a great place to go for that kind of information.
Okay. And just to kind of help to crystallize the experience if someone chooses, let's say, to do the UMAP, to do the assessment with the 4 pillars, about how much time does one, invest in the process?
So for the assessments themselves, it's not a ton of time. Let's see, I think probably about 25 minutes maybe for a strengths finder. Your values, you might spend more time like thinking about them and prioritizing them. So maybe half an hour, 40 minutes. Your skill sort is relatively short, maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And then the career style would probably be another 10 minutes or 15 minutes tops.
So it sounds like somewhere an hour to 60 to 75 minutes.
Something like that, just for taking the assessments, I think so. But then there's a lot of what you end up doing, either with a coach or if you decided to do it independently, is working through some of the exercises. So once you understand what your strengths are, but thinking about like, how are you using them now? What are some other situations where you can use them?
Mhm.
When you're thinking about what they are and you're thinking about how other people might work successfully with you, what
Mhm.
would be a few things that you might suggest? So, for instance, if you had, I don't know, responsibility, you might have like a general guideline that
Mhm.
you would have for yourself where it's like, just be where you say you're going to be or call when you say that you will. Or if it's something like ideation, then it's like, well, give me room to be creative. Let me help. Let me come up with ideas too. Like, I don't want to be just solely execution focused, right?
Mhm. And then to your point earlier, this is where the work of a coach really makes a difference because then you're engaging with someone who knows how to support you in expanding the realm of possibilities, right? Because sometimes when we're by
Absolutely.
ourselves, we kind of limit our thinking just based on what we know. Working with a coach has the possibility of expanding what you believe to be true and thus why I love coaching.
No, I love that because I think that sums it up so well. We do limit our thinking, and there's no way to see what limits that we're putting on ourselves. Even if you're talking to somebody like a good friend or a family member, like they've kind of accepted your own valuation or your own statement of what your limits are. But having somebody who's outside of your life, maybe, and talking to somebody who understands coaching broadly, they can really offer you a lot of things or, challenge you in certain ways. Like, are you sure you can't do that? Are you sure that this is a necessity? Or are you sure that this isn't something you might not like to explore? You sure it's off limits? So
Mhm.
maybe just challenging you a little bit there and finding out like where you've maybe placed some false limitations on yourself or accepted them from other people. A lot
Mhm.
of the times that we have these false limitations, it's because we accepted it from something that someone has said to us in the past, whether it was well meaning or not. We just accepted like, oh, I guess I'm not good with people, or I guess I'm not a great communicator, or whatever it is. And you sometimes need somebody to challenge that because it's not true in so many cases.
Mhm. Nice. And before I pivot to inviting you to any final comments, Kimberly, I just want to say to our listeners, if you are someone who's waiting for the right time, you're having those negative thoughts, you're talking to family and friends who are saying, wait, why would you want to make any change? You've got a great job with a great organization, and yet you're still unhappy. And or you're making some assumptions that really are limiting you. This is an opportunity for you to engage with a resource to do something different tomorrow. Don't sit in that space of what isn't happening, and utilize resources that are available to help you make the change that you're thinking about, dreaming about, and YouMap is an opportunity for you. So, Kimberly, what final thoughts do you have for our listeners?
I would say that one of the most important things is to keep looking at what's possible and not look at what your limitations are. So be willing to reframe some things. I'm a big fan of reframing things and looking at things maybe from a different standpoint and looking at what's possible, what would make you happy, and just taking a fresh approach to things rather than feeling tired and like, well, I guess these are my three options. There's always more options. There's always something else that you can do. And sometimes it takes some creativity to get to it. Sometimes it takes a little bit of brainstorming or a little bit of discomfort maybe in the beginning, but you can get there. You absolutely can. So I just think that most people so undervalue what they have to offer. Either they don't see it or they don't believe in themselves, maybe whatever it is. But I really do. There's been no one that I've worked with that I haven't discovered something great about them that they weren't telling me up front, that we found in the process. So, I mean, it's one of the reasons I love my job, but I also think it's one of the reasons that it adds so much value to have a coach, to be able to tell you, hey, do you know you're great at this? Do you know that this is like an unusual skill that you have to offer? And no one ever does. So it's kind of a wonderful thing.
Terrific. Well, Kimberly, thank you so much for being with us today. Really appreciate you coming and sharing insight and information about YouMap, an available resource that is available for people today.
Thank you for having me.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Kimberly and learned about the YouMap product. Some new points of awareness that I gained in my conversation with Kimberly include the fact that YouMap is available in a variety of formats. It's an ebook, an audiobook, and a hardcover, which can all be found on Amazon or on their website, myyoumap.com. And as I mentioned at the top of today's podcast, this information is available in the show notes at moniquebetty.com/podcast. Secondly, I gained in my discussion with Kimberly that YouMap is available as a self-guide resource or in conjunction with a certified coach. So you can search their online directory of certified coaches and find someone who you believe will meet your specific needs. And third, with the profile tool, you'll gain clarity in your unique contribution statement, which is extremely valuable when you're interviewing and wanting to clearly establish how you differ from other qualified candidates. And lastly, the YouMap profile may be given as a gift to a friend, a colleague, or a loved one. We've all faced the situation where we're trying to be helpful for someone who's struggling to identify the satisfying and fulfilling work they desire. So I recognize that there are a wide range of options available to you with career changing and with job searching. I just want my listeners to be informed and empowered consumers. Job changing is a fact of life, and that process brings about significant challenges for people. So I want you to know how this unique resource is available for your consideration. And now to Coach Mo Knows, a tip, a coaching question, and a bit of inspiration. My tip today is check out myyoumap.com. As I've mentioned, this information is available in the show notes for today's podcast at moniquebetty.com/podcast. There you'll find a link to the YouMap website, and there you'll find the directory of certified YouMap coaches. In addition, I'll provide a link for my interview guest. Kimberly Tilley has her own practice, Pivot Disc gmail.com. So I'll provide you a link to connect with her and her information. And then lastly, the founder of YouMap, Kristen Sherry, has a YouTube channel, and that information will be provided for you as well. Now, my coaching question for you this week is actually a two-part question. When you find yourself leaping out of bed before the alarm clock goes off, what is the professional work that you'll be doing on that day? What will you make happen today in order to create that reality for yourself? And as inspiration, it comes from Norman Vincent Peale. And he said, the secret to achievement is to hold a picture of a successful outcome in your mind. Thank you for listening. If you're enjoying Tuesdays with Coach Mo, please leave a comment and a rating, and I welcome new subscribers. This will ensure that you receive each of our bi-weekly episodes. And finally, if you're facing a workplace dilemma, send me an email at askcoachmo@gmail.com by Friday afternoon, and I'll send you a video reply by the following Tuesday. Until next time. That's a wrap for this episode of Tuesdays with Coach Mo. Showing up here tells me you're willing to invest in yourself and your career. Get additional resources at tuesdayswithcoachmo.com. Please subscribe and leave a review. I'd love to get your feedback. Till next time, this is Coach Mo signing off.
Tuesdays with Coach Mo.